What's going on, guys? It's illumignostic. Give me just a second to kill this volume there, and we are ready to go. So, you may have noticed that I use words like revolution a lot, and every now and then I'll get some like ridicule and sarcasm. Somebody will say, "Oh, who's an edgy boy? Who's an edgy boy? Are you an edgy boy?" Yeah, I'm pretty fucking edgy, honestly. But the reality is that we are on the brink of a revolution. I'm not trying to be edgy. It's just that the apocalypse kind of calls for strong language. Something about the nature of the thing, and we live for our entire lives hearing all of these cliches that are actually the perennial philosophy that Aldous Huxley described. It is the basically the reason that people are so afraid of Freemasonry and the occult. It's far too sophisticated for most people to understand, so they just trust the people who are speaking the loudest. And another one of these cliches of ancient indispensable wisdom is that those who speak do not know, and those that know do not speak. So what we have is a set of laws that exert their influence on energy and matter in order to create the emergence of predictable patterns. And so we have order out of chaos as the fundamental and most simple expression of what I'm talking about here. And so what we are watching with our very own eyes and experiencing in our daily lives is literally the destruction of the old paradigm. It's really happening. This is not a test. It is not a joke. People like myself and Terrence McKenna, and I'm not comparing people here. I'm just saying that this is a list of people that have observed this stuff 30 years ago. The emergence of a new order was predicted by Blavatsky. That was the whole point of Theosophy in the New Age of Aleister Crowley. The new Aeon. It's another way that it's spoken about in the occult is the IAO, or Isis, Apophis, and Osiris, the different phases of the evolutionary paradigm of the culture of humanity, from the matriarchal to the patriarchal to now the crowned and conquering child, losing its mind, trying to find itself, facing its own destruction, realizing its mortality, and having consumed most of its environment before it even really started to understand what its environment was and how to relate to it. Very much like a destructive teenager. What's going on, Fernando? I have been wondering where you're at, so it's good to see that you're still on this planet, although, perhaps briefly. Man, I've been drinking this ayahuasca leaf tea with uña de gato and guayusa, and seems pretty energizing. I don't know if I'm saying to let go of all physical desire. In fact, what I'm saying is that from this destruction of the old paradigm, the new paradigm is guaranteed to emerge, because these laws are absolutely reliable. There are no exceptions. There are no exceptions. So this process of dissolution that creates the space for something new to emerge is guaranteed to create, right? If anything is dissolving or is undergoing, the process of destruction, the phase of destruction, it's guaranteed that a new order is going to emerge from it. And so, what we have is people that understand what's happening and people that don't understand what's happening. And you can choose to have one of two reactions to the situation. And one is to choose fear, and the other is to choose love. To choose fear when your circumstances are such that they are in this world at the present juncture, you're basically choosing your own destruction. And to choose love is to choose creativity, expansion, as opposed to contraction, which is another thing that fear Another modality of fear or an effect of fear is the contraction. Think of the expansion of pupils when one takes psychedelics. Speaking of psychedelics, I don't think it's. Could I explain what I do and what I teach? I think I'm doing that anyways, Anderson. I just saw your question, but um, and I don't know that I like the idea that I'm teaching anything. I'm sharing observations, um, or whatever. Fine, I'll teach. I'm teaching. Uh, where was I though? I lost my train. Okay, the effect of psychedelics on our culture. I saw Sports Illustrated magazine today talking about sports and psychedelics as if it was a very positive thing. The contrast between that and like how psychedelics were viewed in my childhood is it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible to see that much of a diversion from the old narrative. The jocks hated us. The psychedelic kids. I mean, we were few and far between in the '90s, but the jocks definitely didn't like us, and they were definitely of the opinion that if you took psychedelics, your career in sports was over. And it is true that the lessening of aggression and ego and that dominator culture impulse could have an effect on your desire to play football, I would imagine. Um, Nevertheless, though, we're kind of getting off of the topic or the point, which is that this revolution is happening, and it is happening very, very rapidly because that's the nature of consciousness. It is a revolution of consciousness, and so consciousness is not bound to matter in the way that most of the other um, expressions of the universe are that we experience, right? It can move much more rapidly. And so I think that is, a big part of why it can surprise us in the ways that it can. And I think it's very easy right now to look around at all of the chaos and the uncertainty, and you can't anticipate something that could suddenly come along and redirect the trajectory of the human race from this sort of madly flailing sort of toxic waltz that we've been doing with our shadows and with ourselves and with the universe in general. Um, but as I was saying with Sports Illustrated and that whole the whole psychedelic movement and the acceptance of it, that kind of surprise that I never could have seen coming. We can anticipate more of the same, and so when we get into those places of abject despair, and we're really sort of struggling to come to terms with what we're seeing and looking for a ray of light in the darkness, you just have to remember that the most impossible miracle has already occurred. You exist, the universe exists, we are here in 3D, and that is the most absurd, improbable thing that anyone could conceive of. And yet it's happened anyways. Life has happened. And so to overcome a period of chaos and stagnation and uncertainty like this is certainly not out of the question. And Anderson, if you have anything specific that you would like me to clarify, um, I'm all for it. But basically tonight, I really just wanted to hop on. I had planned to do a music live stream tonight, but um, I just felt like I wanted to rehearse and get my gear set up a little bit more. And I I can't remember exactly what it was that really lit a fire under my ass that I felt like I needed to um, speak about this stuff. And I mentioned something about living in an 11D reality. I think that one of the things that psychedelics have taught me, ayahuasca and DMT in particular, is that our perception is certainly limited. Almost like the military, they say things are on a need to know basis, and it's only what is relevant to our survival that is on that need to know basis for most animals. Humans have evolved to the point where our need to know is expanding. We're moving up through the ranks of the hierarchy of consciousness. And so, as that happens, what is relevant is expanding. And so, when we go into these spaces with DMT and you can watch something happen in 11 dimensions, and then you come back here to this 3D reality, uh, and even though you can't perceive necessarily the things that you observed in these other realms and in these other states are still applicable. And in some sense, they're sort of actionable. They are increasingly going to inform what human beings create, where we perceive our limitations to be, how we order our systems and configure our artistic expressions and our technological expressions, the more sophisticated geometries that we observe that are functional in those spaces can kind of dictate to us, I think, how to better integrate different systems and how there can be sort of correlations and relationships where we cannot perceive them in the old paradigm state of mind. We are truly moving into a more multi-dimensional existence. And I think that one of the big surprises is going to come from the fact that we are actually moving extremely rapidly. And it's like it's going to take us a second to collectively catch up with this catapult, this catalyst being sort of launched out of this hyperdimensional cannon. That is what happens when these catalyst consciousnesses or consciousness catalysts are engaged, which is what is happening. It's really a tremendously interesting scenario that we are seeing this sort of widespread integration of psychedelics and yoga and meditation and the breaking down of the old structures. I mean, partly the reason that they're breaking down is because they have become antiquated much more quickly than they were anticipating, right? And because our general consciousness is moving to a higher perspective, we're starting to kind of look down on the politicians and the governmental systems and the prison systems. And it used to be that that was like a singular perspective. There were a couple of people here and there that were screaming from the mountaintop down to the, zombie masses. And it's becoming a wider and wider and wider demographic, looking from all sorts of different perspectives at this thing through new lenses. And it doesn't bear scrutiny. The systems that we have in place do not bear scrutiny. The leaders that we have, I don't even want to speak about them because they don't really deserve our attention. And, I think that that's increasingly important as we have threats like Vladimir Putin and Ukraine and the United States and China, all of these different, superpowers butting heads and threatening to destroy the entire planet if they don't get their way. I mean, talk about a crowned and conquering child, right? Like, they are like toddlers just losing their minds because their toys are being taken away. And they probably don't believe it consciously, but subconsciously, we're all fundamentally connected to a universal mind that knows everything. And it's it's not necessarily, you don't have to think about it in terms of like this omniscience, like this, you know, God character from the old paradigm religions. You can even think of it as the collective's mind's capacity to analyze patterns and extend them into the future. So just with that ability alone, which human mind definitely has, people like Vladimir Putin can sort of see into the future, at least subconsciously, and they know that their days are numbered. Um, you know, there are very few of them as well, and I think that as more and more people awaken, it'll be more and more difficult for them to find enough allies to secure their positions or to maintain their positions. You know, people have already, soldiers have laid down their guns in like protests in Taiwan and a few other places where there has been unexpected solidarity between the soldiers and the citizenry. I think we'll see more and more of that as the absolute abject lunacy of this black parade, you know, continues to become more and more clear to more and more people. Yeah, travel's open again, Fernando. You're welcome to come here. In fact, you guys, we are still having retreats until the end of October. So if you are interested in ayahuasca and plant medicine, not just in taking it, but learning about it, learning about the medicinal plants in the jungle, the edible plants in the jungle, going out into the jungle to swim in waterfalls and frolic with tapirs. I'm not even kidding. That animals, some of the animals here are friendly at the borders of the rainforest. Before you get into the primary rainforest, they're just acclimated to people. They're not tame, but they're friendly. So it's really an extraordinary place to come. And so you have until the end of October. We are going to wrap up after then. Um, yeah, well, McKenna, I think, was correct, you know, and this is one of the things that I've really been mulling over for quite some time because, you know, in 2012, we didn't really have this cataclysmic shift, or at least not in the way that a lot of people expected. I think it actually did happen. And I think that what Terence McKenna was describing in terms of novelty and the acceleration of novelty is an inevitability that the evolution of consciousness is sort of compounding. If you understand that, you know, even our consciousness is constrained and compelled, either way, by natural law. You can understand how it's going to evolve faster and faster and faster. And it's just because if you take whatever the fastest cycling wave in the entire universe is, you know, it is drawing all of the other, you know, cycles to accelerate to match it. So, you know, if you have two human heartbeats, right, and they're right next to each other, they will synchronize eventually. And the slower entrains with the higher. So, you know, if you have this acceleration, the quickening, people have called it, it is constantly drawing all of the other energy that's cycling along with it higher and higher and higher and higher. And so one of the consequences of this is that it's going to go faster and faster and faster and faster. Well, ayahuasca paste isn't really just for like eating. You put it in water and reconstitute it and drink it. You don't. There is no tolerance to ayahuasca. You don't become tolerant to DMT either. If you do, it's very. You don't. I mean, you get used to operating in that realm, but there's no tolerance. So that's not really, the paste is more for storage and easy shipping and stuff. It's not really about tolerance. By the way, within a week or so, I'm going to be spending a lot more time in that realm, and I'm going to see what I can divine. I mean, this is what shamans have historically used ayahuasca for. The idea that it's something that's used for healing is actually relatively new. The shaman might use it to get some insight into a sick person's condition, but generally ayahuasca was for the shaman to get information. It was not for the, people didn't drink it in big groups. All of that stuff has been created by the ayahuasca industry in order to make money, basically. There's nothing traditional about any of it. Uh, Honestly, I know people hate hearing that, but it's absolutely true that, this is just modern innovation mostly. But anyways, it does heal, and it does help with healing, and it does help get you insight. And so because I've been struggling with my own health issues, I've mostly been focused on that. So in the coming weeks, I'm really going to start diving in there and see what I can dig up. Um, should be super interesting. By the way, you guys, do me a favor, hit the like button, share, subscribe, support us on Patreon, where you can join our secret streams. The last couple have been really good. If you're a patron and you have not watched those, if you missed the live, do it. It was really good, especially the last one. And we have been also dissecting the 28th degree of Freemasonry. So any specific mission in mind? Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know what you mean exactly. One of the things that I've been considering is that we have to figure out what a new paradigm looks like, and we have to be able to anticipate to some extent how much the dissolution of the old paradigm is going to put us all at risk. What's going to happen with food chains and supply chains, and how much chaos is there really going to be? How far does this thing have to break down before it bounces back? And those are going to be very difficult questions to answer. I think that analysis of momentum and sort of historical trajectory probably will give some insight into that without even ayahuasca. Maybe I can. It's sort of like Terence McKenna's, novelty sort of graphs that he made. I think we can probably get some pretty solid. I know we can, actually. I mean, all of the patterns in the universe repeat, and they are predictable. That is absolutely a fact. Look at the Fibonacci sequence. Those laws and rules that inform the material, that create, a swirling seashell and a swirling spiral galaxy according to the same, what's the word? It's relatively the same pattern on different scales, right? Those same rules and laws are expressed in every system in the universe, including the behavior of empires. Terence McKenna absolutely was not wrong about that fact. So, that's something I'm gonna start looking at and see if I feel like I can get any real insight into it. But another thing that I've been considering is that even though sort of segregating ourselves isn't ideal, we would like to see the whole human race wake up and unite. I think that communes never work. But there are already sort of mass migrations occurring where people are getting into certain areas that are of like mind. And I think, hopefully, well, not hopefully, almost certainly, if, you want to surround yourself with intelligent people of a certain type of consciousness, they're going to be thinking like, okay, so where is it not cold enough that it freezes in the wintertime? We have access to food, you know what I mean? Even without a explicit agenda, without even communicating directly, we have already started the process of migrating into certain areas. There's Colorado, which of course, if the lights go out, it's going to be easy to freeze. There's a section of California from about the Bay Area up to Humboldt County, where there's an awful lot of us and the weather's perfect all the time. There are areas in South America where this is happening. And so, I think that we really need to be prepared to mobilize our conviction, our determination, our will to empower ourselves and to empower like-minded people. We need to commit to that, absolutely. And, you know, like for myself, one of the things that I'm doing constantly is increasing my skill sets, building passive income, you know, so that hopefully within a year or two, I won't even have to think about income. You know, I think that's really, really important that we can free our minds, and especially from influences that make us stupid. What we want is fluid intelligence. We want access to the totality of our consciousness, and we also want to be like hollow tubes to bring down fire from heaven. So we need to not have interference patterns. We need to not be contracted. We need to not have dissonance, so that we can be receptive to those universal influences that give rise to innovation and creation and spontaneity and creativity. Man, drinking the ayahuasca leaf tea before these streams may be where it's at. There's no DMT. It's just the vine, just the leaves from the vine. But it seems to be really sort of spiritually stimulating, squeegeeing my third eye. I mean, I drink it all the time, but I put a little bit more leaf in there than I normally do tonight. And I think it's working wonderful. No, and we don't use Psychotria viridis here. We use Chalipongo. This is Diplopterus copararena. It's a different vine. Man, I was bummed the other day. Somebody came through and tore up all of my Chaliponga. It's all gone. All of the Chaliponga I had planted in the backyard. All these Yahe vines gone. Really a bummer. Yeah, I can send paste to Europe, I think. Just send me an email. And so, you know, we have... Yeah, I've read Carlos Castaneda's books. He did claim that he made it all up right before he died, which I guess doesn't really matter. Oh, and then there's my whole flow state trip that I've been on lately. That was a tremendously powerful revelation. In fact, it's like as I started to really shake off years of physical illness and the depression that was associated with it and start to get my wings back, I guess, and my horns too. You know, I have to have horns to hold up my halo. People think they just float, but that's not really how it works. The halo, I mean. So looking at dopamine and, you know, really thinking about how we have lived in these sort of unnatural circumstances with these unnatural influences, and our neurochemistry has been pushed all out of whack. And so we have to learn to re-engineer our internal, you know, chemical state. Another thing that I think is important to consider is that, you know, as we catalyze our consciousness, we have to upgrade our hardware, right? Because you can only run programs that can be supported by your hardware. And so, you know, when we realize that the same compounds that give us exposure and connection to the universal mind actually do enhance neurogenesis and neuroplasticity and upgrade our hardware, that is, you know, just one of those divine miracles that is just amazing to even consider. And excuse me, I think it gives us, at least it gives me more motivation to look more deeply into this and see what else can I do. And so, you know, as I started to do research, dopamine is an obvious thing that we need to understand and understand our relationship with it and how our habits and diet and all of that, you know, tie in. And then, you know, we look further and we discover L-Dopa, the precursor to both dopamine and norepinephrine. And, you know, so diving deeper and deeper into this chemical understanding, and how the hardware, the neuroscience of how our brains work, right, in conjunction with a deeper understanding of flow state, which is where this rant started, right? What I'm getting at here is that we have the ability to engineer our being from the physical to chemical, spiritually, our physiology. We really are in a position to catalyze ourselves to a place in consciousness and creativity and empowerment that has never been possible before in human history. And we cannot allow the dying paradigm to threaten us to the point where we're so fixated on fear and confusion that we're unable to take advantage of all these tools, because it's really quite an extraordinary thing. When I was doing my secret stream the other day, I used the introduction to a book of magic, and it was talking about how if you look at all the great spiritual teachers, there's certain behaviors and certain protocol that they engaged in themselves in order to initially catalyze the experience that seemed to open them up and allow them to receive whatever message it was, whether you're talking about Buddha or Jesus or all of them. A period of seclusion, and also secrecy. We don't know where they went, what they did, but when they came back, they basically had similar protocols for attaining to that sort of state. And it had to do with diet, seclusion, and virtue of different types, right? And so, what hit me as I was reading through that is that they were basically just entering into flow state, and their mythologies had sort of informed the shape that their description of that would take. But really, what was happening is that they had been opened up to the universal mind. They had, I believe, entered into what is our birthright or fundamental natural state. And we have found the way back in. And it's truly a beautiful thing. The flow state protocol, you guys can check out some of the live streams I already did. I was gonna just start talking about all the things that you need to do, but I've already done that. So you can. It's just a few weeks back. You can scroll through, find them on my channel. In fact, I think I'm gonna wrap this up. If you guys have any more questions, I'll give you a few minutes. It takes the chat a second to catch up because I have jungle internet. But yeah, I think that we really never lived in a more exciting time with more opportunity. And, if you're really concerned and frightened, as I've noticed a lot of people are, by all of the crazy circumstances that we're confronting in the world, just remind yourself that these are all repeating patterns, and look at the order at which these things transpired before, right? We had the big nuclear scare, the communist scare, all of this crap in the 1950s. And then after that, we had the 1960s. And so what I'm expecting to happen is that with each revolution, each cycle, these things will be focused. They will be expanded. They will be, I guess a good way to think about it is that the 1960s was like a tremor before the main event, before the actual earthquake, So we're cycling through these same patterns over and over and over again. And right now we are sort of in that place where people were in the late 50s. We're getting ready to enter into the early 60s. Then, there's the psychedelics are starting to creep up, and but we are so much more well outfitted than we've ever been before. In terms of our knowledge of all of these ancient mystical systems, the techniques that can be utilized to expand our consciousness and accelerate our evolution, the flow state stuff that I've been talking about, our ability to engineer our own neurochemistry and neurobiology, we really are in a position to create a new heaven and a new earth. I think one of the mistakes that a lot of people in the New Age movement have made is that they kind of think that when we're talking about, you know, eternal life or moving into like a 5D reality, that we are talking about something immaterial. And in my opinion, in order to be alive, you actually have to be alive, right? And so I was considering earlier today that these innovations in technology, um, I don't know if you guys have been following this, but we basically can rejuvenate cells so that people don't really have to die anymore. Um, you know, I've considered that maybe the population reduction will be so vast that the only people that will be left are those that have achieved Christ consciousness, and those people will be able to avail themselves of the technology that will allow them to live practically forever. You know, just a possibility, just a thought, but it certainly is literally possible at this point to extend life indefinitely, right? And so, if you look at all of the other emerging factors that we can avail ourselves of, the potential to rapidly uh, and deliberately evolve a sort of new paradigm for the human race is right at our fingertips. So, um, no, meditation is absolutely not stronger than DMT. If you look at the if you look at they're different tools, they're just different tools. But you know, I've spoken with Buddhist monks. I've gone to monasteries. You know, I lived in California. I am way more impressed with the level of consciousness that's been attained by acid heads on the street corner in California than I am by the Buddha or any of those writings. And Terence McKenna said the same thing. The literature does not support that you can get further without these compounds than you can with them. It's sort of like saying that, you know, if somebody said, uh, I don't need a spaceship to get to the moon, I'll just jump, you know, I'll do it naturally, you would just laugh at them. And I think that this stuff needs to be understood in the same way. We have, like it or not, the influence of old religions that have ideas, you know, like that we are somehow created perfect, and you know that we can just tap into some sort of woo, some magical force that does not exist, and that is where transcendence comes from. I don't think that that's realistic. You know, psychedelics are a technology, and there are some things that you can do with technology that you cannot do without technology. And I think that there is no catalyst to consciousness that can be compared to LSD or DMT or any of these other things. That's an antiquated notion, and if you just think about it logically, it's obvious that it doesn't make sense. You know, it's technology. Um, and another way to think about it actually is that, you know, you are, if the theory that we have filters in our consciousness that screen out basically the overwhelming majority of sensory input coming from the universe, right? There's just way too much. And so it brings it down to a bandwidth that's manageable so that we can hunt deer, drive cars, and do stuff without, you know, kaleidoscopic 11-dimensional patterns of energy swirling in front of our faces. You know what I mean? If it's true that psychedelics just bring down these filters, the psychedelics aren't doing it. It's not the drug. It's exposure to the universal mind. Once these filters are out of the way, you are connected to this greater consciousness. So, you know, either way you think about it, I think that you really just cannot beat, you know, psychedelics. Of course, they should be used in conjunction with meditation, but I think meditation is more about focusing the mind, about creating, you know, stillness and receptivity and also just integration of these sort of peak experiences that you have with ayahuasca and whatnot. But you know, I think it's important to actually that we realize that the things that people have believed up until this point are not necessarily correct. If they were, we would not live in the world that we do at the current juncture, you know. People that want to maintain the old system, the conservative idea, you know, the big argument against defunding the police, right? Increasing the police budget to the point where we have a completely militarized police state in the United States. All the time that that's been going on, all that's happened is that drugs have flooded everywhere, crime's gotten worse. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't work. And then people, their answer is to continue just ramping up these things that clearly don't work. You know what I mean? We really need to watch out for these psychological mechanisms that compel us to do these stupid fucking things and to cling to old paradigms that clearly are ineffective and even destructive, just because it is in our nature. It's something that, it's behavior that is informed by our psychology, just like everything else that we do, right? And it's something that we need to consciously and actively stop, right? It's not going to do it on its own. We have to recondition our minds, we have to recondition our habits, and we have to have the guts to confront the people that are not doing it themselves. You know, we have to find ways to be tactful, even confrontational if it comes to that. But, you know, we all really need to take responsibility for creating this revolution in consciousness and realize that it is our willpower that really is the fuel that is driving the thing. How's it going, Ben Drifting? So I hope this was helpful to you guys. I've got to check out. Do me a favor, hit the like button, share, subscribe, support us on Patreon. We are demonetized, so our only support comes from you guys. There are options, I think, in the chat. Let me check. Yep, in the chat and in the description for PayPal, Zelle, cryptocurrency, to join the Patreon and join our secret streams, which happen usually every Sunday in the afternoon. Thank you guys so much for spending this time with me. I have been practicing so much today that I have broken like 3 or 4 strings. So join me for the music tomorrow. I finally got the sound sort of worked out so that it's not going to distort. I know that I had bad sound quality the last couple of music streams, but I think we fixed that. So yeah, and come see us at our retreat. We only have a few spaces left and only a couple of months until we're going to shut it down here in the Amazon and try to go back to California, because that's where we belong. So remember, you guys, true will, absolutely essential. You have to figure out why you're here and commit everything you do to allowing yourself to pursue that and to be that and to express that. You know what I mean? To acquire the skill sets to facilitate, you know, if you have financial woes that are holding you back, you have no excuses. In these days of the internet, you can find a way. You know, there's print on demand, t-shirts, drop shipping. There's just so many things you can do to liberate yourself. And you have to. You absolutely have to. So that you can constrain every breath, every thought, and every deed to that singular purpose that is innate within you. It is, I believe, overwhelmingly, you know, it's 90% of the reason why we have all of the problems that we have culturally is this crisis of purpose. And so what we have to do is take the steps that are required of us in order to resolve that crisis of purpose so that we can move forward in a meaningful way. And there is no other solution. I really don't think that there's any other way that we're going to liberate ourselves from the shadows of the past. So thank you so much, and good night.